How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Diamond Mounted channel. I'm professional jeweler Chris Bilton, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a wedding ring going from a little block of metal like that all the way to a finished wedding ring. Now, the skill involved in this, you may have done this before, but like I said in previous videos for other things I made, it's very different just making something for yourself, how you choose, to how someone else wants it. Now, I want you to make this wedding ring to my chosen measurements. It's got a finish. That's after papering, polishing, and ready to wear. It's going to be measuring 2.4 millimeters wide, 1.7 millimeters deep. It's got to be size L and a quarter. That's a UK sizing scale. In the US, that's 5 3/4. And I need you to make it from this stage to finished in under 1 hour. Okay? It's different taking your time doing it exactly how you feel you want to do it, to being under pressure with a deadline looming. You're hungry, it's lunchtime, but you've got to finish it, and it's got to finish up exactly right. And you've got one chance, because if you balls it up and you've got to start again, you don't get any lunch break for another hour, and you've got an annoyed boss, possibly annoyed customers. So, give you a little bit of a taste of a professional jeweler's life. Let's begin. So I have a piece of metal, silver, gold, whatever you're working in, approximately at this stage. When you're milling it, after annealing, roll it through once this way, turn it 90 degrees, and then roll it back. I would only roll it through a couple of times, just a slight adjustment on the wheels to decrease the depth. When your metal starts to curve a little bit, that means it's losing its ductility, so you've got to anneal it again. You're working in silver, get it to cherry red. Maybe just as the surface sweats, then get the heat off. That's annealed. You go any further, you're going to melt it. It's curling up now, needs annealing. I've reduced my metal to 2.9. Parallel pliers, about that much sticking out. Get the mills, so it just grips. Turn it, so the mills are pulling the metal through, but I'm holding the metal straight with my pliers. Pull it straight out. Now I've put a flat on there, just that way, and I'll turn it 90 degrees and do it the other way. And you're reducing the diameter and then also sharpening up the corners of it. So you end up with a really perfect bit of metal, and you didn't need a square draw plate to do that. Make sure you've got enough metal to finish your job. The required size is L and a quarter. So take your ring stick with your measuring marks on, put the end over the letter or number, whatever you have, and just roll it along your metal. This is very crude, but it gives you a guide. There you go. A size L amount of metal. At this stage, we're approaching what we want the ring to end up to. So checking the measurements all the time. Yeah, I've got 2.49. Corners are nice and sharp, so that's good. So what I'm thinking to do, we've got 2.4 wide and 1.7 deep. Yeah, let's square it down to 2.4 exactly. And then when it comes to getting the depth right at 1.7, I'm going to squash it down to 1.8. And then by doing that, it will go wider again because I'm squashing it this way. And that should be good to go. Then I can turn it up into a ring, and it will have enough. It'll be slightly over the measurements I need, so I've got that spare bit for filing and papering and polishing. So I've got 2.41, 2.4, 2.39. 2.39 square. So that's the gauge I want it. Now I'm gonna go for my correct depth, which is 1.7. So I'm gonna give it a decent squeeze. Straighten that out a little bit. Now I've just squashed that down to 2.15 and the width has already gone up to 2.55. I annealed it and milled it out a little bit more. I've got 1.77 for the depth and the width has increased to 2.66. That's loads. So I'm going to squash it the other way and get rid of some of that width. I don't need that much. Also, bear in mind, your metal is getting longer and longer the more you squeeze it through. So consider cutting off a little bit of your length of spare metal if you're confident you have enough metal, because this kind of gauge is useful for ring sizes and things in the future. So yeah, keep it in mind what you're going to use and what's going to be wastage. So I've got 1.77, 2.55. I'm leaving it at that. Now I'll show you how to turn it up into a wedding ring. Back at the bench. Right, so when I decided to make this video, I went onto YouTube and searched how to make a wedding ring to see what other jewelers were doing. And I did not see one single video where I agreed with the techniques they were using. So I'm going to show you how us professional jewelers do it, and I'm sure you will agree it's the best way. Right, so got your metal. Is it a little bit wobbly? Mine is. So you've got to straighten it. Use your metal hammer, nothing else. Hold it securely, give it a tap. Okay, next stage, you can start to curl it up. So your metal might be bending one way or the other. You may as well go with the bend, go with the flow. Hold it right on the end. Just curve it a little bit. Right, I'm going to move it along it, just touch it like that. Before you get to the other end, start curling that back. It's just easier. Not going for the full circle straight away. It's bad for the metal. I want you to give it kind of half a curve all the way, and then I'm going to anneal it and then continue. So I've got that. I'm going to anneal that now. My metal is annealed now. So get your ring stick. Put it on. Mine's going to L and a quarter. I can see how much more I need to tighten it up. And yes, I know you may be thinking you can just grab it and wind it around. But to do that effectively, you need a lot more metal than you needed to make the ring. So thinking back a stage means you milled out way too much. So we're considering wastage here, so just the metal you need a little bit more. Grab the pliers. I'm doing this through looking through the screen on my phone, which is a horrible thing to do. Aiming for that roundness. Right. What I'm going to do is just twist that out of shape slightly so I can wind it round and clear that. Turn that up. back on a ring stick, K1/2 L, very close to what I need. So I'm gonna, with my pen, I'm just gonna mark it just off the end because the end bit's never very nice or it's always a little bit flat. So cut that end off and then I can get it on the stick nice and tight, find out exactly where I need to cut it, draw a line, and then do those cuts, and then it's ready for soldering up. I've cut it through. I've got this. That's just my circle I did by hand. Put it on a ring stick, gone over a little bit, squeeze that together. Still a bit big. So I will chop a piece out. Take your time doing this, get it right, because if you go too small, you're then looking at having to use a ring stretcher to pump it back up, which is lethal when you've got a solder joint in something, very likely to break. And then if it breaks, that's such bad news because then you've got to cut away the metal a little bit again, and then joining it up it goes even smaller. So it's kind of a start again job. So be careful, don't go too small. So I've got mine. I cut a little section out. In UK size scale, 1 millimetre is about one size in the circumference. So I put that on a ring stick. There's an element of guesswork here because it's not perfectly round. There's gaps there because I've just turned it up by hand. But that's sitting below L. I want it to finish up L1/4. That's after soldering, like buzzing out the inside and polishing. So you gain a little bit of distance in the inside edge. So that makes the size creep up a little bit. So I want to have a perfect join, and then it should, when I tap it round, it should go slightly under L1/4, which is perfect because that gives me space for papering out the inside and polishing. So I'm going to cut through the join now. Be careful with silver, it's so soft. Once you start, keep the saw blade straight, go straight down through your join. Don't stop and start, just keep going. Even if it gets hot, just got to deal with it. Difficult on rings, on the silver rings, because they pull about. That last little bit. So what I've got is, I'm going to show you with the magnification. There's a lot of tension in the metal. It feels quite stiff. I'm pulling them down. So they should be touching quite nicely now. And look at that join. You want your join tight, and you want it especially neat on the inside because you don't want to end up having a kind of gap in there filled up with solder. So it's going to be horrible once it's polished. And with a ×10 loop, if I can do it nicely. See, you want your join at least as good as that. I've had joins better than that, where you can barely see that it's joined, there's a gap in the ring at all. So that's ready to go. Next stage. Now, just to explain something you already know, metal, when it gets hot, it expands. It's the very basics of thermodynamics. It's called thermal expansion. And when you heat something up, especially metals, basically all matter, I think there's very few things that will decrease as they get hot. But basically all matter in the universe expands when it gets hot. Everything's made of atoms, yeah? And when atoms heat up, you increase their kinetic energy. An atom in something solid is basically in a fixed position, but it's vibrating. When you heat it up, its kinetic energy increases and it starts to move about more. So you think about all those atoms, they're all moving more, they're taking up more space. So that's a very, very basic way of describing what's happening when something's getting bigger as it gets hot. With that in mind, your ring, if you just put that down and solder it, it's going to heat up, and there's quite likely your gap will open up. It could be 1/1000th of a mil, could be hardly anything at all. Certainly wouldn't see it, but it does happen, and that can cause you a problem when it's soldered up and you go to polish it. Any kind of gap, solder polishes out much more severely than the metal. So you end up with lines showing up when you're polishing jewellery. So it's really important to just give something a very gentle squeeze. Silver is so soft, like I wouldn't squeeze that at all really. There's no toggle on there to pull that shut. So just the tension of the tweezers would be enough on that silver ring. If I want to, I can push it down in my slot harder, and then that will put more pressure on the ring to be closed. This is really, really important when you're working on platinum, because platinum solder is terrible for polishing out and giving you lines. So if that's platinum, only ever use 1700 grade solder, and definitely have it clamped shut. This is what I didn't like, what other jewelers doing on, like I saw on their videos. I can't even do it as badly as them. I don't know why you would do that, but basically they took their metal and it was just folded over really badly, so it was just completely straight. I don't know why you do that. You go in and then they solder that up with no tension, and then they bang it round. And the problem with doing it that way is that is now a join, is the weakest, most brittle part of the ring, and you put that, once that's soldered up, you put it on a ring stick and then you force it round. You've got the weakest, most brittle part of the ring now has the most stress under it. And yeah, you can do it and it's fine and it works, but you think about someone who buys that and they're wearing it. The whole time they're wearing it, they're clapping their hands and they're banging their hands against things, holding things, picking up heavy luggage. The ring is getting work hardened the whole time, and it's under more and more stress. And then could be in weeks, could be in like 5 years, it breaks. And they come back to you saying it's your fault, and then you get in a mood saying, oh, these people wear their stuff for years and they're blaming me when I have a problem with it. But yeah, it was your fault because you didn't make it properly. You made it so this whole weak area was under so much tension, of course it was going to break. So do it my way. Make it round as you can by hand, then solder it up with a perfect join, and then the whole thing is under the least amount of stress possible, and it's going to last a very long time. It's going to solder nicely with a nice neat join. To solder it now, I thought I'd explain. You do not need a lot of solder. That's another bonus of having a very neat, tight join. You can use the minimum amount of solder. That is loads. It's only got to flood across and fill this tiny little gap. That's plenty of solder there. So again, you're saving time, you're saving money on solder. This is the best way. Metal soldered up. There it is. Another benefit of having a tight join and the minimum solder. There's less work to do, it doesn't need filing up as much. Use your metal hammer, not your rawhide one. Like, watch this. Hopefully you can see this happen. Can you see that gap under there? The metal hammer. There you go, it's flat. Your rawhide mallet. You're banging it around, turning it around, banging it, and you're stretching the whole ring. You're making the size bigger. This, the metal hammer, will just flatten it where you want it flat. Hardly anything on the inside, so just a quick whiz with a paper whizzer. That'll flatten that. Doesn't even need filing. Again, saving time, saving money. Once I've gone around the inside, the size will creep up a little bit, and then after polishing, it will creep up a little bit more, and it will end up L and 1/4. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to tap that flat that way, all with a metal hammer. Buzz around it, make sure it's perfectly round, and then we'll check the measurements and see what we have. Got it soldered, buffed out the inside, checking it on a stick. Just over L. With a polish, it'll go up a little bit more. My size is perfect. Now I'm going to file up the sides. Working quickly, so taking a coarse, flat file. Just turning it around, filing a little bit, until I've got the whole surface evenly filed. Be careful with that corner. If you dig into it, you're going to ruin it. This is why you want to mill it out, giving yourself a bit of distance, extra distance on the width, because it takes more filing than you'd imagine sometimes. Right, so done both sides. Oops. I'll just check that. It needs papering now. 2.49, 2.52. So we're going to 2.4, wasn't it? So yeah, I've got a tenth to play with. So that's just about right. After I buffed it back and got it smooth, should be correct. So my size is good and my width is good. Now we've got to work with the depth. 1.83, 1.81, 1.89 there. Where are we going to? We're going to 1.7. So your solder join is a bit of a bump. Get rid of that. See, if you've got a horrible join, you would have had to flood loads of solder in it, which means loads of filing. So you're wasting solder, wasting time. I see it's going kind of backwards and forwards, like you feel like you've moved on a stage of the ring, but later on it's going to cost you more time fixing it. So I just rotate it, keep my file flat. This is a square section ring. Obviously, if you're doing D section, that's another technique. Actually, you would have milled it with a slight D on it as well. So this one's going to be flat section. If anything, D section is almost easier. It kind of hides any imperfections in your measurements. When you're doing one perfectly flat sides and flat top, it's very unforgiving for any inaccuracies. Also, when it comes to polishing as well, it's got to be polished properly, otherwise it shows up very well. So I've got little miniature hammer marks. I handled it with pliers. You're getting rid of all those little dips and lines. Be careful, it's got to stay the same depth all the way around. There's a chance I need to reduce that more. 1.81, 1.82, 1.83. I move around it because the measurement is different all the way around. So that needs a bit more filing, a slightly heavier file. So I want it to finish 1.7. About a tenth of a mil is good. It doesn't take long to reduce it by that much. If you're at this stage and you're trying to reduce it and you've got to get rid of like half a mil, you haven't milled it out enough. You should have gone further with the milling. Wow, 1.74, 176. That's very close now. With the coarse buzzer. Keep it still. If you hold it against your peg, you'll get a much better, more accurate finish, rather than doing this and wobbling it all over the place. You gotta get it. All those file marks have got to come out. Otherwise you'll go to polish it, you'll find a little line, and you have to come back to this stage, wasting time. With making anything, whatever you're doing, you've got to finish that stage properly before moving on. Otherwise you're going backwards and forwards. You're not getting anywhere. Give this a light buff. Make sure there's no dust in your calipers so it's accurate. So the size is good. Width, I got 2.48, 2.59, that's quite a lot. What did I say? 2.4. I'm going to take it down a bit more. Depth, 177, still a bit high, 175, 177. If I can get it to 175, that'll be good. For polishing, we'll take off a little bit extra and then that'll be very close. Width, I'm going to buff it a bit harder. When you're checking your measurements, always reset your calipers back to 0 and make sure the clamp is clean. Because it measures 1/100th of a mil, it's very accurate. These are so old. I won these in a competition in the late 90s. They're like 20 years old. I'll get some new ones soon. 2.78, 2.78. 2.76, 77, 2.46, 2.45. Yeah, getting there. Now that I'm very close, I'm moving on to the finer buff sticks. I do a bit, I rotate it, I do a bit, I rotate it, I keep going round. And look at what you're doing as well. If you see any lines, you can concentrate on those areas. I'll go around it once more. So I'll buff around it. Keep buffing until you've got all the file marks out. Keep checking it. 2.44, 45, 44, 44, that's good. 177, 174, 175, 175, 176, 178, 177. 177. I'm going to buff that little area more, a little bit high. And we're working to 100ths of a mil here. 77, 76, 75, 73. Okay, so what we've got is size L and a bit, like trailing edge size. Turn it round. There you go. That'll squeeze up a little bit more with a polish. The size is good, measurements are all good. Ready to go. Here we are, the finished product. I wasn't going to, but I thought I may as well finish it off. So I gave it a light polish. Checking the width. Oh, 1.69. 1.68. 1.69. Oh, 172. It's a little bit off. Now those numbers seem quite different, but remember we're talking 100ths of a mil. I mean, it looks perfect, but it's nice to know exactly what you have. So anyway, good enough in my book. 2.38, just under. 39, 39, 40, 2.37. Oh, that's pretty good, you know. That's pretty good. And then size. Perhaps a tiny bit small. Let's try the other way. I could. I mean, in the shop, I would give that to a customer, and then I'm sure it'd fit them if they sized for L1/4. But if they wanted it a touch bigger, no problem. I'll buzz it out, and then polish it and give it back to them. So there you go, wedding ring. There it is. The professional jeweller's way to make a wedding ring. I hope you found the information useful and interesting, and a good guide to show you how to make a ring. The techniques I use are tried and tested and used by all the top jewellers across London, at least as far as I know, and with my 20 odd years experience, definitely these are the best ways to go direct to the finished result in the shortest time with the best results. And that's a finished ring that's not under any stress, that's wearable for many years and that'll never break, polished up, join doesn't show at all. That's good to go. And that was about an hour's work, so borderline a while you wait job, completely from start to finish, finished piece of jewellery. Amazing. So I hope you liked the video. Please hit like and subscribe to be notified of further uploads, and I'll see you next time. Bye.